For more on all of this, we're joined now by Liza Goitein. She's a congressional law expert and a former trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Justice. Thank you so much for joining us, Liza.
My pleasure.
Let's start with General Flynn's mounting troubles and his refusal to hand over documents to lawmakers or appear for an interview. From where you sit, what's your sense of the calculation he's making by refusing to cooperate?
Well, he's certainly in some legal jeopardy here. His firm received at least $500,000 from the country of Turkey to represent its interests, and he still didn't register as a foreign agent, as he was required to do by law. He also engaged in conversations with Russian Ambassador Kislyak, trying to influence foreign policy as a private citizen when he was during the transition, and that's a potential violation of the Logan Act. And then he didn't disclose some of his foreign contacts and foreign sources of income on his security clearance forms back in February 2016. And if that was deliberate, then that too could be a violation of the law. So you can certainly understand why he wants to plead the Fifth Amendment here. The problem is that the Fifth Amendment doesn't usually cover documents. It usually covers testimony, oral testimony. And so it'll be interesting to see how hard Congress pushes for these documents, which it badly needs in order to investigate Russian interference with the election and potential ties between Russia and the Trump administration.
As you talk about efforts on the part of Congress to get these documents, what options do they have to compel him to hand them over?
Well, they could take the soft approach, which would be to offer him immunity in response for his testimony.
But that's off the table, they're saying right now.
They are right now saying that that's off the table, and I think that's very understandable. We've seen in the past that when people testify in return for immunity, that can scuttle criminal prosecutions. For example, that happened with Oliver North and John Poindexter. They had their convictions reversed because of testimony they gave before Congress. So that's going to be an absolute last resort. There are also contempt proceedings that could be undertaken. There's criminal contempt, there's civil contempt. These things could potentially result in Flynn being jailed. So this could get very serious. I think it's going to be a test of how vigorously the committees want to prosecute this investigation, want to conduct this investigation. And that's absolutely critical because, you know, while it's great news that there's a special counsel at the head of the criminal prosecution, or I should say the criminal investigation, we absolutely need for Congress to do its job and do its investigation on some of the broader questions that are at stake here.
Let's stay focused on this hunt for documents. How surprised are you that the former FBI boss James Comey hasn't handed over documents requested by the House Oversight Committee? What does that say to you?
I don't think we know enough at this point about what that means. There are several potential explanations for that, and I think it's a little too early to come to any conclusions about what's happening, especially since we haven't had any direct statements about the reason for the delay.
Okay. Moving aside from Comey, let's give it time and see what happens in the days ahead. CNN is learning that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, didn't disclose meetings that he had last year with Russian officials and other foreign contacts when he applied for his security clearance. First of all, let me ask you, how big an omission is that? And then following on from that, I want to get your take on the explanation we're getting from the DOJ. First of all, how significant is this omission?
It's very significant. It's critical to the determination that's made about the national security interests involved when classified information, top secret information, is given to somebody in their official capacity. So it's absolutely necessary for people applying for security clearances to give full information. And if they deliberately conceal information, that could be a criminal offense, and they could be prosecuted. They could even be put in jail for up to 5 years. So I think this is quite serious.
All right. Well, the explanation we're getting from the Department of Justice, from the spokeswoman, is that he had initially listed a year's worth of meetings with foreign officials when he applied for this clearance. And then a member of the FBI told him that he actually did not need to do that if these meetings were had in his capacity as a senator. Does that explanation make sense to you?
Well, I think we've heard other stories as well. We've heard some other FBI officials coming forward and saying, no, that's not the usual practice. Usually we advise members of Congress to disclose all of their foreign contacts. There's also a question about whether these meetings with Russian officials were truly in his capacity as a senator, or whether he was in fact acting in some way as a Trump campaign associate during these meetings and these communications. And so I think that, again, is something that Congress needs to look at very, very closely.
So that being said, with those unknowns, those unanswered questions, does this new information, this failure to disclose these meetings, does it increase the chances that the Attorney General could find himself drawn into the special counsel's investigation and furthermore actually be interviewed by the various committees on Capitol Hill investigating all things Russia?
It's certainly a possibility, and that creates an incredibly awkward situation when the Attorney General of the United States is actively under investigation for potential collaboration with a hostile foreign power who attempted to interfere with our election.
Liza Goitein, really appreciate the insight. These are incredible times we're living in. Appreciate the analysis.
Thanks very much.